Hey, welcome to the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute with your host, the alchemist of Indiana's Black Forest, Alan Bishop. Hey, this channel is all about home distilling and legal distilling. If you've got questions, reach out to us in the comments below, social media, or via bishopshomegrown@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out thealchemistcabinet.com. Hey, happy Sunday morning, guys. I don't know when this video will go out. It'll probably be not Sunday. But I told you guys I was starting to work some clay. Figure out how to make alchemical tools out of that clay. This is native Indiana clay my good buddy and still hand Tyler Richardson brought to me over at Old Homestead. And now that I've worked with it a little bit, I'm feeling pretty confident to start showing you guys the process. So I'm gonna take you through the whole thing, tell you about how we do what we do. So first I'm gonna take you in here to the greenhouse and show you the actual raw clay which we're getting ready to process. So ignore the mess, it is what it is. It's a greenhouse with a wood stove in it to heat the house with and start plants with. But here's the actual raw clay from over around Bedford, Indiana. Now, you can get clay out of most soils. Any soil that'll actually has plasticity to it that will form. Say you see a spot that you drive through and the tire treads are left behind, there's clay in there, but you gotta clean it up. And the way that you have to do that is you have to dissolve this stuff. What I do is I take it and I put it in buckets and then add water to it. I take a paint mixer on a drill, stir it up real well, let it set about 10 minutes. All the heavy shit will fall to the bottom, all the clay will float. Then I start pouring that off through a sieve and separating it. Once that's separated, what I'll do is I'll take that separated stuff, I'll let it set, and a layer of water will form on top. I'll pour that water off the top, and then eventually I will sieve that again into these trays over here to set in the greenhouse to start drying out. After they start drying out, that's when we'll take them to the basement, hit them with the space heater, get them all the way dry, and then start actually processing. Those buckets with the sediment left in them, there's so much clay in this stuff over here that a lot of that clay will just fall to the bottom repeatedly. I mean, this is pretty much pure clay. There's some sand and some gravel. That's all we're really trying to get out. Probably isn't even necessary to do that for what we're doing, but I like pure high quality clay. So I'll probably get 95+% return out of those buckets that I process this in. All right, literally just as simple as putting the clay in the buckets to start with. And if you're paying attention, you will see that this is actually a mix of both gray clay and really rich red clay. Really high quality source. Glad to have access to it. But you could do the same thing potentially with the soil out of your backyard, depending on its consistency. You may not get as high a yield out of it as what I'm going to get out of this, but you can harvest clay out of a lot of different soils. So you can see I got this hose on the highest pressure it'll go to. You can see how dense that natural red clay really is. Every once in a while you get one that'll break apart like that, but most of them are so dense they will not do that. couple pumpkin seeds in there. We use this bucket for the pumpkin carving with the girls. They'll strain out just fine. Magic pumpkin seeds there. Good luck. Alright, so as a preview, here's after we process it, we pour it into the trays, kind of break it up a little bit. This is what it looks like. Now we'll take, I got a board I use to crush this up, and then I put it into a blender. This stuff's hard as a rock. Now this over here is stuff that has been sifted and needed to be sifted more and ground up more. We do use a blender typically to do that with, and I'll show you guys all that stuff over time. And here we go. Alright, so here's the sieve that we use. I don't know if I can do this while holding the phone or not. We're gonna see. Probably not the best in the world, but we're gonna see. So we're simply pouring that clay and water solution off. All the heavy stuff's gonna stay at the bottom of the bucket, including a bunch of this clay, because as I said, it's a very, very highly pure clay to begin with. So yeah, there's still a lot of clay in there, so we're going to work that up with water again here in a minute. A lot like strain and mash if you're a home distiller. Very, very similar. Alright, so the other thing I didn't mention that we do, so I said that I let that clay settle, and I've been pouring the water off this some. Then we get pillowcases and pour the clay water solution in here, because this pillowcase is going to filter out all that water and start the drying process of the clay. We'll actually hang this up somewhere where it can drain and start to dry, and then once that starts to get tacky, then we'll put it in those trays we were talking about earlier. So, see how big of a mess I can make here. Pillowcase is dirty and doesn't want to stretch with it. We'll hang it up in the greenhouse just like that. That's good. Alright, here we go. Now, if I've done everything right here, I'm going to put these in the oven at 475 degrees for about 30 minutes. It's going to burn off any organic matter that's left in them. They are bone dry. From there, I'm going to preheat them next to my fire in my earth kiln. And then we're going to try to fire them and hope that they don't explode like they did last time. We'll find out. Alright, ceramic stuff, well, clay stuff went to the oven. We didn't preheat, we put it in the oven on baking sheets and took the oven to 475 for 30 minutes. Let it cool down gradually. We've now brought it outside. It is setting next to the fire that is now dying down, sort of preheating. Here in a minute, I'm going to push all the big wood over out of the way, get a nice little coal bed there, place the pots in there, and then I'm going to start building the fire around the pots and see what happens. So this is my little pit kiln here. right, here we go. Thoughts and prayers, guys. So I found out last time that the sound of pottery exploding in the fire is exactly the same sound that wood makes when it pops. And yeah, we'll see, I guess. Thoughts and prayers. All right, so she's burnt down now. I've been fanning it with this piece of metal, keep them coals good and hot. I'm not even going to say from here that it looks good because I'm scared. We will see. We will see for sure. All right, here they are cooling off, and so far from initial inspection, they're way too hot to touch. But from initial inspection, real happy. So only had one actually crack, which was this pour bowl that I made. So this did not start off as a pour bowl, and I shaped it that way after I made the bowl. And when I did, I clearly stressed the clay. And so it had developed a crack when it was drying, but that turned into obviously something more major. But the 2 pots for the pot still and the 3 heads so far seem to be okay. This bowl here is awesome. This little pot is awesome. When I made this handle, it had cracked when I made it while it was drying, but structurally it's fine. So now we will inspect the insides in a little bit, but I feel confident that we can make all kinds of alchemical tools, including clay pot stills. All right, so the next step is this stuff has a tendency to weep. I did fill the 2 pots up with water. The other pot didn't weep like a tiny little bit. This one had quite a bit of weepage from the bottom and the sides. So the trick to sealing these pots up, because that's a normal natural thing, they are breathable, is to take some kind of starch and boil it in the pots. And this starch basically works as almost like a cement as it works its way into the pot itself. So we've taken a few teaspoons of flour, we filled this thing up with water, and we've just got it on propane right now, even though we're normally going to be running this off wood or something of that nature. And the trick here is just to boil it. So it had weeped around the shoulders quite a bit. That's now drying up. I'm sure, you know, of course the high heat is drying that up, but we'll see if the starch seals are up. There you go. All right, so after the clay is dry, comes the part that sucks. That's having to grind this stuff up. So there's no real great way to do it, to be honest with you. Mortar and pestle, that sort of thing. What I'm doing currently is I've got an old fence post and a tray. I'm literally just beating the shit out of it. So you want to get it into small clumps, as small as you can, and then I run it through a blender. Now, don't do this with an ice blender. Don't fuck up your wife's blender. Trust me, just don't do it. It's not worth it. Go to Walmart and buy the cheapest blender you can find and fuck it up, because that's what you're gonna have to do. Good Sunday morning, everybody. Church here for me today at the Bishop Homestead, but continuing on with our clay pot stills. So yesterday we did put some flour in these with some water and boil them out, and that seemed to seal up the leaks they had. Now these pots will wick. That's a natural thing. Some of you guys might be familiar with like earthenware water pots. The idea being that it keeps the water cooler. The reason it does that is because of evapotranspiration. That's what actually cools it off. So they will weep over time. Now, still number 2, the more round of the 2 of them, she weeped quite a bit more than still number 1 did. And I noticed that she has some surface cracks on the bottom of the pot, but they are just surface cracks. They don't go all the way through. It's pretty common with this style of pottery. Not at all concerned about it. I've got her full of water right now. As you can kind of see, I don't really see any weeping spots on the side like I did yesterday. Yesterday when I filled her up with water the first time, she weeped all the way around where these 2 pieces that make up the pot, where these 2 pieces that make up the pot meet at, and she weeped on the bottom. Now I filled her up last night with hot water, and she only weeped in the bottom just a little bit, and that's okay. So today what we're doing is got us some paste made up, and I just got done boiling the heads in some starch water. We're gonna put those on and fit them up with the paste, and put a little copper worm on there and do a little proof of concept here. All right, so we put this ridge on the pot to fit the head in there, and we also put this ledge in there so the head has something to rest on. And the idea here is that we will fill the inside ridge up with our paste and then force the head down in there. That should give us a good seal. We'll find out. All right, the head is now fitted in. We've got the channel full of our paste here. Probably more than we actually need, but you know, we're gonna see. I also left this hole because I didn't make these still caps with traditional clay pot style condensers. We will be doing some stills like that in the future. I did this because I happen to have this little worm over here that we've made to fit this. Now we will have to paste that in. There's no way around that, and that's why that hole is the way it is, so that we can paste it. All right, so we wrap that copper line with a little bit of our paste and then shove that down into the opening on the head, and then I actually took that paste and pushed it down into that opening as best as what I could. We've got the worm all hooked up. Actually looks pretty damn cool, I think, but let's see what she does. Alright, well, I see a little steam, but I actually think that's just that bread dough drying out over there. So I'm not too awful terribly worried about that, and I could always put more bread dough on it if I needed to. So there's that, but here's the cool thing. Of course now she's not going to do it, but she is running. There you go. Of course I don't have any cold water flowing in, it's just you know, whatever water's in that worm. But as proof of concept, yeah, pretty happy. I'm going to go over here and poke around on this dough though and see if I do have a steam leak. I don't think so, because now I'm seeing just a little bit here and there. And again, I really think that's nothing more than just that bread dough letting off water. All right, so pot number 2. The first one is called Lilitu, by the way, and this one's called Adamu. I will be naming them after female and male syzygies and making them in pairs, probably 3 at a time, because usually one's going to bust. But Adamu is a heavier pot, much larger heads. Already has not had the stress fractures that Lilitu has had. So the future pots will be more in this style than in the other style, I do believe. Also, with this expanded headspace, we're actually getting a better flow coming off of the worm, even though that water is extremely hot and actually getting close to boiling in the worm right now. Yeah, but the next thing is to play around with these, with making some various little different things. Potentially, probably going to make a lot of medicinal waters with them. Make maybe some essential oils and things of that nature. So I think in order to get the solids in there and not scorch, what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy some marbles, or maybe even I'll make some damn clay marbles. Hell, I can make my own now. I hadn't even thought about that. But line the bottom with those clay marbles, so there's something there to break the bottom from touching and scorching any of the solids that go into the still. Pretty cool stuff. Success. Hey guys, so I hope you've enjoyed this little preview of the clay work that we've been doing here at the Alchemist Cabinet. Again, just one more thing, one more part of the art of alchemy, which I'm always chasing. One more thing that I love, the ability to be able to make my own tools literally from the ground up, to rise up a still from the ground. That's real magic, that's real alchemy. And I intend to expand upon this project, make bigger stills, make all kinds of other alchemical and magical equipment over the coming months. I'm processing a bunch of clay right now. I did not get a chance to show you guys the entirety of the processing of the clay, which I will do in a video in the near future. I had intended for that to be a part of this video, but I'm headed out to Mount Vernon the day after tomorrow, and there's just not time to do it. I don't have clay that's dry enough to do it with. But let me tell you, raw clay can be fickle. There's a number of things that you want to look for, including the plasticity, but also the softness of the clay. How well does it form? How much temper do you need to add to it for what you're doing? So temper would be things that are non-expandable, like sand or charcoal or graphite or anything of that nature that can take high temperatures, and they also don't expand and contract the way that clay does, because what causes that clay to crack during the process of baking it in the earth oven in our little pit kiln is actually the expansion and contraction. And over time, you will actually produce stress fractures in the clay itself. This is why in Oaxaca, for example, stills last anywhere from a couple runs to a couple weeks to maybe a year and a half most of the time before they crack. You'll see them used as potters as pottery everywhere in Oaxaca. And oftentimes they actually will repair them with cement and then use them as fermenters, which I think is a pretty cool idea myself. I suspect that over time I'll have a number of pretty cool decorative little pots sitting around here in different places, because this is something I intend to pursue. But what I'm getting at is there is a process to this. So a few things that I've learned about clay since I started this process. So first and foremost is not all clay is perfectly suitable for building the way that I'm building. I'm not using a wheel or anything like that. I am literally pitching the way that, you know, would have been done in ancient times without a wheel. That clay can be too soft for that. It could slump. That becomes a problem. The other thing that happens is that it may not have the plasticity that you want. In other words, if you make a coil out of it and wrap it around your finger, does it crack? This clay does have a tendency to do that. That tends to be exaggerated by the time you add temper to it. So I use sand for temper at about 25% by volume, and that's going to make that problem worse. So I was lucky enough to come across a YouTube video that pointed me in the direction of an alchemical manuscript that gave me a way to get around that, which I'll tell you guys about too, and I will link to that video whenever I get to that point, so you guys can see what that fellow is doing as well. Younger fellow who is playing around with alchemical concepts as well. As always, I can't speak during these things. I don't know what my deal is, but I like to do dry process clay for storage. That's my thing now. So what I'll do is I will take that clay after we dry it, like we talked about. I'll run it through that blender and everything, get it down to a powder. I sieve it again. When I say there's a lot of time and effort goes into processing this clay, it means there's a lot of time and effort that goes into processing this clay. I mean, it takes a tremendous amount of work just to get the clay to a state that is storable and or processable into something. So I will sieve it, and then I will add my sand, mix it in well. That can be stored in buckets or whatever. The reason I don't store it as wet clay, although I could, is because the way that we're going to alchemically fortify this clay such that it can hold a 25% temper and still be plastic uses some organic compounds that can over time go rancid on you and cause some smells and stuff like that. Now those are going to get baked out of it in time, especially with that oven preheating at 475 that we talked about in the previous video. Now the other thing I have learned, however, about clay like this, so there's a lot of bacteria in that clay, and the interesting thing about this clay is once we wet it, I don't work it the day that I wet it. I let it set for 2 or 3 days with a wet towel over top of it, because that clay will become more workable over 2 or 3 days. Your actual biome, the bacteria that you have on your skin and the bacteria the clay has in it, will actually make that clay a better, superior quality clay over time. In fact, apparently a lot of people try to buy aged clay from art supply dealers that don't know any better. Right, they've got old stock on hand. Somebody will buy it on discounts because, you know, it's old stock. It's actually the premium quality clay. So I like to let it set for 2 or 3 days after I mix it up between my biome, the biome of the clay, and the biome of the materials I'm using to fortify that clay to make it more suitable for our purposes as alchemists. It really makes a big difference between day 1 and day 3. I will also show you guys how I'm forming those pots and that sort of stuff, so you guys can get some idea of how to work this sort of stuff. I learned a lot just from this first experience, well, first 2 experiences technically, you know, with 2 sets of processing, 2 sets of building, 2 sets of firing, one which failed completely, one which had a piece that failed. I kind of think I have a little better idea of how to form things and make things work the way they're supposed to work. I think this will be just like all the other alchemical pursuits that I'm a part of. It will be a lifelong thing that I'll constantly be learning about. I have intentions. I'm going to talk to Tyler and see if I can get one more bit of clay from him to process for this winter, and I will then begin exploring Bishop Farm and identifying high quality clay deposits on the farm itself, so I can actually start making it out of the soil of the place where I am truly from, the actual geographic location that I'm truly from. I do have intentions of expanding my pot still size. I've already got plans. I've already got, let's just say I'm planning on trying to hit about a 5-gallon mark, and we'll see if I can pull that off or not. Talk about something being heartbreaking. There's going to be a lot of clay to make a 5-gallon, and a lot of processing to make that 5-gallon. If that thing busts in the fire, dude, whew, yeah, it's a whole nother level of mad. I do have another alchemical process going in the alchemist cabinet right now. So I've been working on a product called the Theriac. It's an old alchemical thing. There's a number of uses for it, but the main use that we're after here is for colds, fevers, etc., and hangovers. So that is currently, the base for that is currently fermenting in the Adamu pot still. So I don't know if I mentioned it in the videos or not, but the two stills have names. They will be named after male-female counterparts, what are called syzygies in Gnosticism. I'll never repeat the names. So stills 1 and 2 are Adamu and Lilitu. After, obviously, what you would know as Adam and Lilith, Adam's first wife. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Love y'all. Later.